Hey everybody. This chapter is going to be really short as far as the recording goes. It's on social psychology. Um, so, what is social psych? It's the study of how people think, behave, and interact with one another in social situations, whereas most of the time, psychology is focused on the individual mind and behavior. In social psychology, you're focused on group behavior instead of individual. Um, when it comes to social psych, culture plays a big role. And culture is a lot of different things. It's a combination of knowledge, beliefs, values, material possessions, so many different types of things. But culture always plays a huge part in social psychology and also just our social situations, just in general. So, it plays a huge role with that. And when it comes to social psychology and social interaction, one of the big things that we often talk about are norms. And those are widely accepted, standards of conduct, basically rules of behavior that are widely accepted. A lot of times they're unspoken. For instance, you could have like folkways, which are everyday norms. So, like meeting somebody and shaking their hand. Well, I guess pre-COVID, because now most of the time you're not going to shake somebody's hand anymore, at least for the time being. But when you talk to somebody, having eye contact with them, just little things like that. Here in the South, holding a door open for somebody would be a folkway. And whenever you violate these norms, they're not really going to have much of a consequence. So that's what a folkway would be. But we have a lot of norms that we have to abide by, depending on the group we're a part of, depending on where we're a part of, depending on what we're doing at the moment. So it really changes from place to place, person to person, group to group, as far as what's expected of us. Let's see here. Another thing I wanted to go over is cognitive dissonance. If you look at the definition, it says it's a clash between your self-image, thoughts, beliefs, attitudes, and perceptions, and your behavior. So, to shorten that down, basically a clash between your thoughts, your attitudes, and your behavior, or your thoughts and behavior. We all experience it to a point, but we don't really realize it a lot of times. Like, for instance, how we might know we go through cognitive dissonance. We might feel uncomfortable before doing something or making a decision. We try to justify or rationalize a decision we've made or an action we've done. We might feel embarrassed or ashamed about something we've done and try to hide it from other people. So, like, some examples of cognitive dissonance, they would be smoking. Smoking would be one. We obviously know smoking is bad for us. Smoking can cause cancer, but yet some people smoke anyways. Like, we might know we shouldn't do it, but there are plenty of people that smoke. That's cognitive dissonance, knowing that you shouldn't do that, but you do it anyways. There's a huge amount of these that you could look up. That's just one example I'm going to give you. If you type in cognitive dissonance, there are a lot of other examples that will come up for that. But the smoking one's an easy way to show a clash or a disconnect between thoughts and behaviors. So you're not supposed to smoke, but a lot of people do it anyways, and they might try to justify it or try to hide it from people. I had a teacher who tried in college, a professor who tried to hide the fact that she smoked. Like, instead of smoking on campus, like she would get in her car between classes and she would drive about 2 miles up and down the road, like a 2 mile stretch, just drive back and forth. And one of my friends was like, "What is she doing? Like, why does she always drive? Why is she always driving?" So one day she got in her car and followed her, and turns out she was smoking. Like, she didn't want us to know it. She knows it's not a good thing to do. She knows it's bad, but she does it anyways. But she was trying to hide it from other people. She didn't want other people to know she smoked. So that's an easy example of cognitive dissonance. And it's funny because I had forgotten all about that story until just now. So I'm actually glad that I thought of that. There's another concept I want to mention is social loafing. And that's when you have a tendency as to be a part of a group and do less work because you know other people are going to pick up the slack. Um, you're going to work less hard when you have little responsibility than when you have most responsibility. So let's say like you're in a group of like 10 people and working on a project. Your part is going to be a lot smaller than if it was like a group of like 3 or 4. So in a group of like 10 or however many it is, you're going to feel less responsibility. You're more likely to slack off and not take it seriously. Whereas in a group of 3 or 4, you're going to have a lot more responsibility. You're more likely to take it seriously. Even in that situation, a lot of times we see where people don't take it seriously. But the bigger the group is, the less seriously you're going to take what you do. So we see that a lot. One other thing I want to talk about is, well, a few other things, but one of them is what we call personal space. Obviously, during this time of COVID, it's something that's very important. 6 feet of social distance is what's mandated, what's required, or what's suggested, I guess I should say. So let's face it, tons of people don't abide by that at all. But personal space, no, I like my personal space. I don't like people being up in it. Even pre-COVID, like I just don't want people up in my space. I'm just not that kind of person. I want my nice little bubble, and I want people to stay out of it. And it's like, and some people just don't have any concept of personal space. Like whenever I would be standing in line somewhere, I would see somebody like, let's say like the person standing right here. Well, and somebody in line, instead of like giving them a little distance, would literally be standing like right there behind them. Oh, it would drive me crazy because I'm like, back up, give that person their space, like just back up. And when people would do that to me, it would just give me such crazy anxiety and just make me feel so But you've got 4 types of space: intimate, personal, social, and public. Intimate is the most private, and that's immediately surrounding the body. From 0 feet to 1.5 feet, you have personal distance, and that's whenever you're interacting with close friends. So 1.5 feet to 4 feet. Social distance, that's where some kind of impersonal interaction, such as like a business meeting, takes place. That's 4 to 12 feet. Then you have public distance, and that's like formal interaction, such as like somebody giving a speech or something like that. That's 12 feet plus. But that's the types of personal distance. Or personal space, social distance, whatever you want to call it, comes down to being the same thing. A few other concepts: conformity. This is something that's studied really big. I suggest looking it up on YouTube. Conformity study, and ASH. Or is it ASCH? One of the two. Off the top of my head, for some reason, I can't recall which one it is. But Solomon Asch did a study where he wanted to see if people would conform to because of group pressure. But conformity, it's whenever you change your behavior or what your thought is to fit in with a group. You don't want to stand out, and you feel peer pressure, and you don't want to be different than them, so you conform to it. You give in. But check out that. So go to YouTube, instead of typing in conformity Ash, type in Ash line experiment, and you'll be able to see a video. It'll show what that line experiment was. It's actually really interesting. So it's really simple but interesting, so I'd suggest checking it out. Let's see here. We have obedience, and that's where we conform or listen to what authority says. And I would suggest going to YouTube also and type in Milgram study, and it'll show you. It was a study where they tested to see if people would be obedient, to see if they would conform to what was being asked of them. And it's really interesting to see. So again, go to YouTube, type in Milgram study. One other word I want to mention is groupthink, and that's where you have decision making as part of a group. Whenever a group is making a decision, and that's when people are more likely to agree, keep agreement, even at the cost of critical thinking. So, like, whenever you have people participating in group think, you have a group and they're not really thinking critically about it. They're thinking very, very narrowly minded about it. They're ignoring a lot of facts about it, and most of the group is thinking one way. And a lot of times, people will conform to that because of how strongly somebody might be feeling about it, or again, more like group pressure. An example of groupthink would be Pearl Harbor. There were people who said, "Oh, well, there's no way that the Japanese would ever bomb Pearl Harbor. They wouldn't attack us. Like, we don't have to worry about that. We don't need to be ready for that." Even though there was intelligence that said otherwise, there was information that said otherwise, but they said, "Oh, well, there's just no way." They had this narrow-minded thought of, "Oh, well, we're the U.S. They're not going to come bomb us here. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, that's unrealistic." Even though there was evidence that said that it was very possibly going to happen, or was going to happen, and we saw what happened then. Pearl Harbor did get bombed by the Japanese. So it's when you don't think critically, and you just, like I said, you have a very narrow-minded view of something, and you just refuse to believe what's there in front of your face. So that's groupthink. And that's all I have for that chapter. So I'll talk to you guys later.